Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. So, this is actually the first year that I've been in a relationship during Valentine's Day. So it's really the first year I've had any reason to celebrate it at all. Don't worry though, I won't be mentioning it again since I still remember how piss-takingly awful that is. I did, however, want to use this holiday as an excuse to play an appropriate game for this time of year. Which is funny, as it's the only time of year that you can call this game appropriate. Singles Flirt Up Your Life is a Sims clone that deals mostly with the sexual aspects of relationships. It promises socks, sex, and seduction. And in all honesty, they had me at socks, as that's definitely a word that gets my ears pricking up. Not just my ears either. The game is very adamant that everyone in this game should be humping and that no time should ever be wasted on anything else. So, who am I to deny it? Let's get going. Oh, not really sure where else I can bring this up, but the manual also has an advert for sextoys.co.uk and Alice Stage pole dancing platforms. I do like it when a game encourages you to try their fun stuff at home, but I think this might be mismarketing. Like, just a little bit. I put the game in and quickly find myself a bit of a problem. I was told to reboot my computer so that I could complete the installation. This is typically a normal thing, but somehow this doesn't work. Upon rebooting, it told me to reboot again. And then I have to reboot again and again. Basically, whatever rebooting does wasn't happening. And now I was left with the game fully installed on my computer, but no way to access it. I did discover that this was secretly the work of PC gaming's mortal enemy, DRM. For those of you who don't know, DRM is a piece of software that piggybacks on the back of a video game to protect it from illegal copying. This might not sound like a bad thing if you're a law-abiding citizen, but believe me, law-abiding citizens are treated worse than pirates by these softwares. Okay, so we can't play singles as there isn't a way to get the cunt to work. Well, now what? I guess we'll just have to find something else to play. I would play one of the two games that I couldn't do a full review on in the past, that I've actually managed to get working since, or at least I hope I have. But I need some live action shots for one of them, and I'd have to sacrifice all of that just to get it for the February 14th deadline. I originally considered playing an unrelated game as my Valentine's game, but no, you guys deserve better than that. So I'm going to meet a promise that I made a while back by showing you Super Farm. I've teased this game a few times since I started doing the show, and I figured that now was the best possible time to do it. After all, its central theme is love. Well, horniness, but basically love and horniness are the same thing. The game opens up with a nice picturesque scene where a cow is prancing around, frolicking in the meadows. Then it's hit by a fucking truck. Now I'm not sure about the impact of humans in this world. It's implied that they exist, but these animals just sort of run wild and there's nothing to dictate where they should be and no signs of any effort to keep them in check. If there is a farmer, it's probably Uncle Harry from Karma. He's probably getting pissed off at all their antics, and he's probably just sat in his chair waving his fists, wondering where his little kid went. Fucking cow, I will beat you for that! Anyway, the animals are all drawing straws, and, well, you can see that the environment that they live in is a bit strange. There's pin-ups of chickens with tits on the wall, with all the sense that makes, and they even draw tits on chickens that don't have them. You might have gotten the impression on what's on these creatures' minds by now, and what their sole motivation is. They draw straws to decide who gets to be the bitch today, and sadly, it's the pig. As I said, this game definitely opens up with some pretty strong implications that this pig would get gang raped if... Now, you're probably going to have to ask yourself if the developers had their heads in the right place. No. No, they didn't. So Pamela Anderson is a chicken. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant beautiful turkey hen. Whatever the fuck that is. And no, I'm not reading too much into this. She's called Pamela and wears the same fucking bathing suit as she did on Baywatch. Again, her having tits makes all kind of sense. But considering that the animals wear superhero costumes, I don't think I should think about this too hard. You might think that because of the name of the game, and the fact that the animals wear these weird superhero costumes, that it has something to do with superheroes. But no, it really doesn't. It has absolutely jack shit to do with superheroes. It's not parodied once, so I don't know if this was a basic design concept that they just never shedded or what. It makes no sense, but none of this game makes sense, so it's fine. The animals are horny as fuck and immediately battle over her affections, and thus begins this great adventure through the wacky world of Super Farm. Believe it or not, this game actually has a campaign, and despite its complete lack of story, the campaign has a lot going for it. So that's what we'll be playing today, kiddies. So the first level introduces you to everything, and aesthetically, I think it's the most interesting level as a whole. As you travel around this area, you get to see what kind of life the animals lead. For example, there's a heavily stained mattress in this corner, surrounded by sex toys. And there's the dress and wig from the opening, which is being hung out to dry, implying that it's actually been used before, or possibly recently. It makes me wonder if the gang rape in the opening scene happened before. I mean, they had the stuff ready, along with all these sex toys. It can't be the first time they've thought of it. You can also find stuff like watermelons and sacks with holes drilled into them, and of course, there is a big mound of shit. Not sure if that has anything to do with the kinky stuff, but I really hope that it doesn't. But hey, whatever rocks their boat, you know, so long as it's not shown on screen, I don't care what they do. I can't help but admire that this is told purely through visual storytelling and implications. Like the whole game is like this. There isn't a single word of dialogue uttered, and instead it's done through the movements of the characters in a sort of Looney Tunes fashion. It actually kind of reminds me of what Food Fight wanted to be when they first started, before the original footage was stolen. The animation is very lively. Everyone is always doing something and moving, but it's not in an obnoxious way. I understand that there's a lot of things out there that never shut up, and with a premise like this, you could just picture that being the case. But thankfully, it gets when to move and when to make noise, and when to just move on. It doesn't really linger on jokes or use the same joke twice either, which is actually pretty decent, because I'd forgive it for doing so. Most of its humour is rather crass. It's either toilet humour or cartoon violence, and I personally feel like this does work fairly decently. Not much of it is what I'd call funny, at least not in a laugh out loud sense, but I feel as if there are a few scenes where it really works. What makes this work really well is how it's incorporated into the game. The game is full of cartoon logic, like throwing anvils at each other and hitting each other with shovels. But the game actually uses cartoon logic as a part of its core game design. For example, how do you stop an anvil from falling on you? Hold up an umbrella and watch it bounce off. How do you stop someone from hitting you with a shovel? Hold up an anvil. What happens if two people with shovels hit each other at the same time? The cartoon aspect is actually part of the core gameplay and isn't just an aesthetic choice, and they go all out on it as well. It feels like an Adult Swim version of Looney Tunes. This is probably the best cartoon brawler I've played because of this aspect alone. Even games based on Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry often serve themselves up as generic kart racers or generic beat-em-ups or something. And though they'll have cartoon weapons and sound effects, it typically plays like anything else. I feel as if Super Farm really goes all out on this, and it plays like nothing else I've played. Even the objectives are really cartoony, knocking each other's teeth out and collecting them, collecting items to win a woman's affection, fighting over an objective point or a token. I also like how creative they get with this. The aforementioned cat level was a pretty funny setup, but it's actually a follow-up to another funny setup where you have to bring Pamela radioactive magic mushrooms because the animals get turned on when she trips balls. I do love how this actually makes it so that you can do the same objective twice in a row and actually forget that this is the case. I don't even mind that I had to do the same thing twice because at least it was different. The flag level is probably the only one where I don't feel like it fits what's going on. The only exceptions are when it's actually shown in the previous cutscene and it makes sense. Otherwise it just sort of comes out of nowhere that they're fighting over a flag. The teeth minigame also comes at weird times, like when the plane blows up and their first reaction is to beat the shit out of each other and steal each other's teeth, or when Pamela Anderson chicken, turkey, hen, whatever, I'm not a fucking zoologist, gets kidnapped, so they have to fight in a gas station. Why? She's right there, just break her out. What the fuck are you guys doing? Maybe adding a 5th game mode would fix this, but it's not too much of a problem. It's not like these modes outstay their welcome, and as unfitting to the situation as it often is, Capture the Flag is still one of my favourite of the bunch. I'm a rocket man. Now, this might be surprising to hear, but this game lacks any kind of narrative. Its plot is literally 4 horny animals travelling around the world after a chicken who is clearly cock-teasing them. No pun intended. It sounds like it could get old and repetitive really quickly as well, but I feel as if there are 2 things that save it from this. The first is that this game is really short. It can be beaten in an hour. And the second is that it's also pretty self-aware and even has the animals react in a rather realistic and humorous way as they realise that they're just being milked for all it's worth. The game also manages to escalate well, starting off with a small backyard brawl and ending up in a whole bunch of crazy situations, like being thousands of feet up in the air, and there's also a scene in which you can command a cruise liner and then they treat it like it's the Titanic and then it gets crashed into an iceberg. It's pretty fucking weird to say the least. It makes it so that it doesn't get stagnant or old at any time. Nothing really outstays its welcome, from the jokes to the overall game itself. The back of the box says that her being kidnapped is the main motivation for them travelling around the world. But it's not really that big of a thing. I guess it gets them off of the farm, but it's resolved off screen within 2 levels of it happening. Another thing that this game has going for it, which is kind of ironic, is the bros before hoes mentality of its protagonists. It's kind of funny how invested they are in helping each other and saving each other's lives. Like, for example, the sheep goes as far as to do CPR on the turkey to keep him alive. And also when they end up stuck together in situations without Pamela, they're always supporting each other, helping each other up in places, doing all sorts of things to make sure that they all make it to the destination. It's kind of funny to me because this is a game about rivalry rather than enemies. It's kind of adorable in a way. Notice how Pamela doesn't give a shit about any of them though. I honestly think this makes her the worst fucking person in this game. And this game opens up with 3 people trying to gang rape a pig. Like, I do know that these guys are horny assholes, but she's not really any better. She leads them on, and I honestly think that the best possible ending for this game would be for the pig, rabbit, turkey and sheep to say fuck it and decide to just live in a 4-way relationship. It would have been a much more satisfying ending, and I'm going to add it to my list of things that would be better if the two main characters gayed it up, instead of running off with the token love interest. I think that the best example of this, apart from this game, is Arrow. I honestly think that Oliver should have gayed it up with John Diggle. They'd make a much better couple than the bland pieces of fucking bread that they ended up with. Speaking of stuff that makes me hard, I think I should talk about the visuals. I personally love the stylized graphics of this game, both in gameplay and in cutscenes. I feel that this supports my belief in stylization beating realism every time, when it comes to not dating your product. Games like this will always look better to me after the fact than games that were meant to be realistic at the time, like The Getaway. It kind of uses the whole cartoon thing to its advantage in this aspect, with characters being disproportioned to add to the comedy of the scene. And even in the game you can get flattened and misstretched or whatever else can happen in a cartoon. I do love this, but I hate the fact that you lose your textures as your character goes into psychedelic mode. I get that this is to convey invincibility, but I wish they could have done this without removing every bit of detail off of the character, as it looks great in the cutscenes that don't use this effect. You actually make it to this desert island, and it's there that you have this great party that almost feels like a ritual due to the expectations that are thrown down. There's a large dance party, and everyone gathers around as they get ready to claim their prize. However, oh man. Don't worry though, they do invent a rather cost-effective way to get a cow into space. By force-feeding this cow baked beans, they make it fart so hard that it flies into space. This might just seem crass and stupid, but you'd be wrong. This is based on actual science. Recently a guy went into space with the fraction of the budget that he would have had if he had actually used the NASA method. And he did come out and say, if only I'd fed a cow a fuck ton of baked beans, I could have gotten there way faster and way cheaper. So they fly into space, and that's when they roll out the ending. Part of me always wanted to know what would happen up there, but I know that a sequel to this game wouldn't be that great. It would fail really to meet any expectations, and it's not like it's a complete mystery anyway. Believe it or not, there are 4 more levels that are playable after the campaign is beaten. So let's take a look, shall we? The first is this spaceship level, which has all these cool tractor beams. I actually found myself getting stuck in one at one point, a few years ago, and it was pretty funny. This is the Touch Pamela game, which is probably my least favourite to play, due to it getting tedious after a while. The second level is probably the most fucked up of them all. It's a giant version of Pamela frozen in carbonite, with the animals trying to bring her pills for some reason. I'm guessing the pills will reverse her condition, but I don't really have a clue. My favourite thing about this level is that in order to get up to her feeding tube, you have to use her breasts as trampolines. The third level is a prison where you have to fight over a flag. Not much to say about this one, but I do really like it as a backdrop. It's quite claustrophobic in comparison to other levels, and the energy fields do mix it up a little bit. Finally, there's the Gladiator Arena, which is built on top of this giant statue of Pamela for some fucking reason. I really don't know, maybe they've based a city entirely around Pamela as some sort of goddess? I don't understand it, but it's pretty cool. So, finally there's this Gladiator Arena, which is the biggest arena in the game, and it's used to knock teeth out. And in all honesty, I love this level design on every level. And it kind of makes me wish that they'd animated cutscenes for these levels. Even if they were just still shot cutscenes, I'd be happy with it. So, that's it for the levels and the campaign. However, that's not all this game has to offer. There's also a puzzle mode, a challenge mode, and even a co-op mode. The co-op mode is just the normal game, but with different players being assigned different colours. You can do the championship mode on both normal and co-op mode, something that I appreciate quite a bit, to be honest. It also allows you to have a long stream of games without having to go back to the menu for any reason. The puzzle mode, as mentioned before, is actually quite challenging. I did most of them, even as a kid, to unlock the characters, but I never managed to beat them all, and there's not really any incentive to do so once you've unlocked everything. Once you have all the levels and characters, all that's left is super farm bragging rights. And I don't need those, as I'm already the greatest player in the world at this game by default. It's just a fact at this point. There's a total of 10 characters, as I've mentioned. Each of them has their own intro cutscene, but you can only view it once, and I really don't want to have to redo this entire fucking thing for a grand total of 8 seconds of footage. There's a duck, a bull, a rat, a donkey, a fly, and a rooster. The duck plays like the turkey, and a little bit like the rabbit. The bull is a little bit like the pig. The rat is a weird combination of the turkey and the rabbit. And the donkey is more or less the sheep again. The fly is more or less like the rabbit, but he moves faster. And the rooster is some sort of super character who moves fast, jumps high, and can carry up to 3 items at once. One thing about the characters in this is that they aren't just player models as far as the game goes. Each of them has benefits and drawbacks. The rabbit, for example, is a high jumper and moves really quickly, but only has 1 inventory slot. I found myself playing as him a lot, and as a result, I often forget that I have multiple inventory slots when playing other characters. Some characters can jump higher than others, and others can be controlled a little easier. Other than Bill, everyone is quite balanced, and even he doesn't guarantee success. You might have realised really early on that I have a major soft spot for this game. I find it hard to criticise it, as, in all honesty, I can't really think of any blaring problems that I have with it. I guess you could do everything in it within 2 hours, so that's something. And its humour definitely isn't for everyone. It's rather crass, and it's definitely got some content not suitable for everybody. Even though I played this as a children, I wouldn't say that it was a good idea to expose your child to this. But hey, I turned out okay. I honestly find that this is an incredibly fun experience. It just didn't get the respect that it was due upon release. I remember it being given like 5 out of 10 scores from PS2, and I honestly don't remember what they found so bad about it. The visuals are pretty sweet, the soundtrack is great, it can be fun with friends, and it has a rather entertaining campaign that doesn't outstay its welcome. And I'm just happy to play this nearly 20 years later. That's how good it is. Honestly, I think this might be one of my favourite games that I've covered for this show. I'd highly recommend it to anyone who has a PS2 and an affinity for cartoons or just likes the look of its gameplay. That's all for me this Valentine's Day. I think that this game has taught me that true love can be found in the most unlikely of places. Oh god. I just realised I went up the arse of someone about to fart. It's not really the smartest thing you can do in a game like this. Oh no. I've gotten stuck. Oh cool, there's multiple cameras. Ah, now he's stuck in here as well.